He lost his memory and gets accused of a brutal crime, until he finds out the disturbing truth about his wife in the city. Hello, and welcome back to the story. Today we will be making a recap on a 1998 movie titled The Dark City. Warning, there will be some spoilers ahead, so watch at your own risk and enjoy. The story begins in an old hotel where a man named John wakes up confused and naked in a bathtub. He puts on a coat and finds a key in one of its pockets. He also finds a briefcase which contains a postcard of a place named Shell Beach, and he gets a brief flashback of a younger him on a beach. The phone rings and a doctor named Schreiber tells him that John lost his memory because of an experiment that went wrong. John is scared, and the doctor tells him that there are people coming for him, so he must leave the hotel immediately. John suddenly hangs up when he sees something. A woman is lying lifeless on the floor beside a bloodied knife. John is able to run away just in time as the strange-looking man arrives. The hotel manager tells him that the fast food restaurant called and said John left his wallet there. When the hotel manager checks John's room, he gets grabbed by the strange men. One of them sees the broken syringe and asks the manager where Mr. Murdoch is. After he answers, the stranger commands him to sleep. The manager immediately drops down and falls asleep. John's wife Emma is a singer at a bar. After her performance, a waitress tells Emma that her husband's doctor wants to speak with her. Emma checks the business card, and it is from Dr. Schreiber. She later visits him, and the doctor tells her that John suffered a psychotic break and completely lost his memory. He adds that John could be violent, so Emma must let the doctor know immediately if John contacts her. A police inspector named Frank is investigating a series of murders that targets call girls. He arrives at the hotel and finds out that the suspect's name is Jay Murdoch. John arrives at the fast food restaurant, and the staff tells him about his wallet. He puts it in one of the vending machines, and John tries to take it, but the door is jammed. He gazes at the vending machine, and it just suddenly pops open. As he tries to leave, a police officer stops him. But then a call girl comes in and helps him get away. The two later go to the call girl's apartment. Back at the crime scene, Frank's superior arrives and tells him that the murderer is on the loose because the previous chief inspector has gone crazy. A while later, the ex-chief inspector named Walensky runs inside. As if he's gone mad, Walensky shouts, "They're watching us, and there's no way out." The police officers drag him away. At the station, Emma approaches Inspector Frank to file a missing person report for her husband. The inspector invites her to his office and shows Emma a list of female names. Frank says her husband is a suspect for their murder. Emma gets mad and walks out. Meanwhile, at the call girl's apartment, John checks his wallet and finds a picture of his wife. He then finally finds out that his name is John Murdoch. He asks the call girl if she is not afraid that he might be the killer, and she answers that he does not look like one. John sees a little girl and he smiles, and then leaves. A while later, John sees a billboard of Shell Beach. He goes up and then notices that there are newspapers inside his jacket. Those are cut articles about the killer of street walkers. John realizes that he must be the murderer. The strangers appear and one of them commands John to sleep. But he is confused as his power does not work on him. As they go near him, John uses his powers to break the floor, and one of the strangers falls down. The other stranger is shocked and screams, "He can tune!" A stranger jumps behind John, and he falls down onto the ropes. He notices the hand of the billboard is attached to the rope, so John pulls it, and the billboard's hand cuts the head of one of the strangers. The other strangers seem to also suffer the same pain. And when John looks at the dead stranger's head, he sees a creature coming out. He runs away and escapes. The strangers have gathered and talks about John's ability to tune, and why the doctor did not report it. Their leader, Mr. Book, later arrives and orders them to capture John. Emma arrives home, and she is surprised to see John. She says she has been worried about him, but John does not know her. He says that he saw a key in his pocket, so he assumed that he lived there. Emma realizes that John really lost his memory, so she tells him about Dr. Schreiber. She reveals that she cheated on him. That's why he left her. Emma asks if it is true that he murdered those call girls, and John says that he went with a call girl earlier to test if he can actually do it, but he did not, and Emma believes him. When John sees the cop's car, he hurriedly leaves, but Inspector Frank is waiting for him outside. John says he is not the killer and that there are a group of men after him and wants him dead. Emma jumps at Frank so John can escape. John finds Dr. Schreiber and he follows him as he leaves his clinic. The doctor is taking a bath in a sauna when one of the strangers, Mr. Hand, comes in and shows him the broken syringe. The doctor says he tried to imprint John, but he woke up and knocked the syringe out of his hand. John is just hiding in the locker room, listening to them. Mr. Hand says John knows how to tune, and the doctor could not believe it, saying the strangers are the only ones who can do it. Mr. Hand says it is almost midnight, and they need to start the tuning. John continues to follow the doctor, and he sees him enter a door that just suddenly appeared on the wall, then disappears. Inside, the strangers are preparing the props for their subjects like the photo albums, wallets, and IDs. Dr. Schreiber is concocting the memories that they will later imprint on the subject's dot. The strangers later gather to start the tuning. The head statue opens to reveal a big clock. In the meantime, people above are in their usual business like the poor couple where a husband is complaining about his job, and the wife is complaining about taking care of the kids. As the clock strikes 12, all other clocks, trains, and cars suddenly stop, and everybody in the city drops down and falls asleep. John, on the other hand, is wide awake and gets confused when he sees everything is not moving. He tries to wake the people up, but they just drop unconscious. Mr. Books then orders to commence the tuning. Different buildings start to rise from the ground. John sees the strangers put different people in different places in the city. As with the poor family earlier, the strangers change their clothes into expensive ones. The house also transforms into a huge and luxurious mansion. And Dr. Schreiber starts to inject the imprint on the couple's head. John later confronts the doctor and asks what is happening. The doctor says it is not safe to talk outside, which makes John mad and accidentally throws the doctor using his power. Dr. Schreiber is surprised that John could actually do it. He tells him that he can teach John to control it, so they can fight the strangers and take back the city. A door appears and John runs away. The tuning is done, and everything starts to move again. The people also wake up like nothing happened, and they go on with their business. The now rich couple wakes up, and they are now talking about their business firm. At the lair, the doctor has finished concocting a similar imprint that he tried to inject on John. Mr. Hand suggests injecting it into his head so they can find John. Mr. Wall opposes it and says imprinting is dangerous for them. Mr. Book insists that it is their only option. The doctor proceeds with the imprint, and Mr. Hand gets to see John's fabricated memory of Shell Beach, his wife, and his murder of the call girls. Meanwhile, John finds a message at the back of the postcard. It is from his uncle named Carl. He searches the phone book for his uncle's address, and when he asks a newspaper guy how to get there, John is shocked. He is the same guy as the hotel manager. He asks him how long has he been working in the newspaper store, and the man replies 25 years. The strangers first arrive at the call girl's apartment and ask for John, but they got nothing. Mr. Hand follows John's imprinted memory and kills the call girl. In the train, John sees Shell Beach on the map. He asks how to get there, and the man says to take the express train. John waits as the express train arrives, but it does not stop. A man tells him that there is no way out of the city, and he tried everything already. It is Walensky, and he says that he accidentally woke up one midnight and finds out that the strangers are swapping people's memories and changing the city. Walensky says there is only one way out, and he suddenly jumps and gets hit by the train. Emma finds the call girl's apartment that John told her about. When she comes in, she finds the call girl lifeless. She runs away but is then stopped by Inspector Frank, who has been following her. John later arrives at his uncle's place. Uncle Carl shows him his pictures from when he was a kid playing at Shell Beach. John asks him how to get there, but Uncle Carl says he does not remember. When he asks what happened to his parents, Uncle Carl says they died when a fire broke out in their house. John notices in the picture that he got burn scars on his arm. He shows his arm to his uncle, and it has no scar. Uncle Carl is confused, and John says that everything is just all lies. Back at the call girl's apartment, Emma explains to Frank what she is doing there. A while later, she hears something and goes to check it. She sees the little girl hiding under the bed. Frank checks the girl's drawing, and it shows 3 men wearing black and stabs her mother. Back at his uncle's house, John starts to wonder why it is still nighttime. His uncle gets confused and tells John to get some sleep. Uncle Carl later calls Emma and tells her that John is at his house and is acting strange. Emma says she will get there, and they hang up. As Emma and the inspector leave, we can see that Mr. Hand is just outside the window listening. He then flies on the way to Uncle Carl's house. At their lair, the strangers get ready for another tuning. As the clock strikes 12, everyone stops and sleeps again except for John. He sees the stranger outside his uncle's house, so he runs upstairs. Mr. Hand catches up to him. John punches him and pins him down. Mr. Hand is able to escape when the roof suddenly changes. The tuning finally stops, and the people start waking up again. John tries to run away from the strangers, but he is trapped. Frank and Emma arrive in a car, and John quickly jumps in, and they drive away. At the station, Frank asks John about the last murdered call girl, and John says she was alive when he left her. Frank gets mad and asks John to stop telling lies because he is already confused. John says everything does not really make sense in the city. He asks the inspector if he knows about Shell Beach, and Frank says he does. But when John asks how to get there, Frank finds it hard to answer. John also asks him when was the last time he saw daylight, and Frank is speechless. Frank says there must be a good explanation for all that's happening. John makes the book float using his power, and asks the inspector to explain it. Frank is astonished. At the visitation booth, Emma apologizes to John for what she did before, but John says she did not do anything, because her affair never happened in the first place. There are just people who manipulated their memories to make them think they have done things. Emma says I love you, and even if what he is saying were true, her feelings for him could never be faked. John uses his power to break the glass and kiss Emma. The police then take him away. The assistant police tell Frank that the chief wants to see him to congratulate the inspector on capturing the killer. On his way, Frank takes out the key to the jail cell. A while later, the strangers arrive at the police station and make the officers fall asleep. They ask the chief to take them to John, but when they arrive at his cell, John is no longer there. John goes to the sauna and asks Dr. Schreiber to explain everything. Dr. Schreiber takes out a syringe and forces John to inject it himself because they don't have much time. He says all he needs to know is in the syringe. Inspector Frank appears behind the doctor and takes out his gun. John takes the syringe from the doctor and hides it in his jacket for safekeeping. The inspector says it's time to go. When the doctor asks where, Frank says Shell Beach. John is shocked and smiles. John later asks Frank why is he helping him, and the inspector says he just wants to know the truth. Dr. Schreiber says they won't find anything outside the map because he tried it before. They reach the end of the road, and they ride a boat to cross the canal. Dr. Schreiber explains that the strangers are alien parasites who use human dead bodies as their hosts. Their race is on the brink of extinction, and they think that their only way to survive is if they unlock the secret of a human soul. They think that they can do it if they get to understand how human memories work. That is why they mix and match the memories of different subjects. The strangers wanted to study a murderer. That's why they try to imprint John a new personality and set up his life and history. The doctor reveals that John had dozens of lives before, but on the last imprint, he was able to resist it and somehow develop the stranger's ability to tune. Tuning is what they call their power to change things, and it is how they built the city. The strangers control everything in the city, even the sun. It is always dark because the strangers could not stand the light. They finally reach the edge of the city, and when they open the door, they are stunned. It is just a poster of Shell Beach on a wall. Frustrated, they tear off the poster and break the wall. John uses his power, and the wall finally breaks away, revealing the outer space. The strangers arrive with Emma as their hostage. One of the strangers tries to stab them, but Frank fights with him until they both fall out of the wall and break away from the force field. We can now see that the entire city is actually a floating habitat in outer space. Threatening to kill Emma, John surrenders to the strangers. They later bring him to their lair. Mr. Book believes that John could help them finally get what they were looking for. He forces the doctor to imprint their collective memory on John to make him one of them and share his soul. The doctor sneakily takes the syringe that John has hidden in his jacket, and it is what he injects on his head. John sees that his memory has been altered by the doctor, where Dr. Schreiber trains him every day since his childhood to master the tuning power of the strangers. John later wakes up and breaks free. He easily knocks out the strangers and fights evenly with their leader, Mr. Book. After the intense battle, John manages to defeat Mr. Book. John asks Dr. Schreiber where Emma is, and the doctor says she has been re-imprinted, and he cannot return her memories because the facility was destroyed. Using his new power, he creates a sea outside of the city. When Dr. Schreiber asks where is he heading, John says,
Shell Beach.
We can see that Emma now works at the ticket booth, and her name is now Anna. She rides a bus on the way to Shell Beach. John runs into Mr. Hand, who reveals that he is dying because John's imprint is not compatible with their kind. John says the strangers were looking for the human soul in the wrong place. He then rotates the habitat so that it would face towards the sun, and for the first time, the city experiences sunlight. When John opens the door, he sees Emma, who now has a new memory and identity. They introduce each other's name as they walk to Shell Beach. Did you like our movie recap? Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. To be updated for new movie recaps, hit the notification bell.